And we should be live. It's loading, but it should be live.
Yes, it works.
Momentarily.
Let me just share on my...
And we should be... Oh, I hear myself, live. So I guess.
Second panel. Let me change the link. There you go.
Okay.
All right.
All right, we're live. Awesome.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much again for doing this. So thank you to everyone joining us and welcome to the second panel of WildsCon. We saw your excitement in tweets from yesterday's panel and we can't wait to see what this conversation will bring. Today we're joined by two very special guests. The fandom already knows and loves Sarah Stryker and Tonya Khan. So a few months ago, I had the random idea that a Wilds convention would be fun. Never did I think I would be on a Zoom with either of you. So thank you so much for doing this. And thank you to everyone else who helped plan this with me and make this a reality. So I'm Zoe, and I actually run all the Gretchen Klein social media accounts.
Hi, I'm Gabby, and I'm an artist in the Wilds art community. So before we start, just a quick reminder that this will be uploaded on YouTube after the panel is over.
So Sarah Stryker needs no introduction, but we will still give her one. She is a screenwriter and playwright who has written for various projects such as the acclaimed third season of Netflix's Daredevil and an upcoming Pixar feature film. But most importantly to us, she is the mastermind behind The Wilds, not only being the creator of the show, but also working as a writer and producer.
Tonya Khan is a television writer and producer, also known within the fandom as the lesbian basketball playing writer, who gave us Tony Shalvo. Outside of the fandom, she is known for her work on many acclaimed and popular shows, such as 911, Lone Star, Arrow, Daredevil, and of course, The Wilds. We received so many questions for you both, so we tried to group them into different sections and categories. First up, we are going to ask you guys some general question, mostly for Sarah, but if Tonya, you have any input to put on them, be free to respond as well. So let's start with the very beginning. During the creation process, were there any version of the Unsinkable 8 that you completely changed later or just got rid of?
Well, it was originally the Unsinkable 11. In fact, there were 11 castaways on the plane en route for doom. And it became abundantly clear that with so many characters, it was hard to make each one unique and indelible and, really land an impression very quickly on the viewer, on the reader. So I took some of the qualities from, and I essentially compressed into 8. And those 8 stuck, as soon as it was by virtue of filtering and funneling, I landed on the characters that were the strongest and that felt the most real to me. So it would have been really difficult to shoot because, and also I think it would pull focus. So I think 8 is sort of the magic number. In this case, it really felt like it. So.
That's just insane.
Wow.
We often on the set, because there are, when you do a scene that has all 8 characters in it, it's so difficult. It's time consuming to shoot because after you do the wides, you have to do each individual coverage. And the camera operators and the DPs are always a little bit begging me, I think you need to kill somebody off now. I think somebody needs to go because to winnow it down would help them enormously. But no, we don't. We follow our own creative spirit, not what the DP needs necessarily.
Wow.
Right.
So The Wilds is a very unique style of storytelling with different girls serving as narrators for different episodes. A popular theory amongst fans is that we see the episodes through the narrator's eyes and are influenced by their point of view. Is there any truth to this theory? And why did you choose this narration style?
The narration style for me, I'm very passionate about voiceover, which is a very controversial opinion. I think in screenwriting communities, it's often a little bit looked down upon as some sort of facile way of telling rather than showing. So I think it's arguably like not chic for me to love voiceover so much. Tonya, what do you feel about voiceover? Are you anti?
I'm not. I mean, I think when it's done well, it's so powerful, which is what you did. You know, it's a very hard conceit to pull off elegantly and to have a lot of depth and really sort of match all the storylines that you had going. Because I mean, I know you're in 3 time frames here, so I think it was such a great device to deliver the character stories. You just write it so beautifully, and not everyone can do that. It's a very, very difficult conceit to do well. But Sarah is very masterful, and that is not hyperbole when applied to her.
I'm always encouraging people to know how to take compliments, like be proud, like say thank you. And yet I cannot do it. I'm always shrinking, getting better. We're all working on ourselves. The voiceover, for me, the interior lives of the characters was important, especially with Leah, who is the most verbal. She has a sort of lyrical, writerly way of expressing herself. So I definitely wanted to give her that tool. And then I wanted to be able to pass it to each of the other characters. You'll see that some characters have more voiceover than others, based on essentially how verbal they are. It's about showing the interior life, giving that window, and also to really anchor the episodes. You want to have that through line. You want to have a guide. You want to have a guide, like a Virgil who takes you through this story. And even the way we cut the episode, we often go in and out of those scenes on the faces, just because that central POV character is so important. In terms of the kind of grander theory about whether or not the scenes on the island are through the narrator's eyes, I will sort of like neither refute nor entirely endorse that theory. I think the way that it's structured, just because you have the story in the hands of the storyteller, we privilege certain pieces of information that could only have been seen by that particular POV character who's holding you throughout that episode. So I would encourage people to continue exploring that theory and see what that yields for you, especially in season 2.
All right. Another question that we got a lot was, as you guys know, the fandom is very into astrology. And we were wondering, what are the girls' birthday? We talked about it a little bit with Scott yesterday, and he said that you actually did chose like each of the girls' birthday. So we were wondering if you could like tell us or give us some hint. I'm trying to be like exact about these things, so I don't want to speak out of school right now. We have a spreadsheet, and I like, by virtue of the fact that it's like 6 a.m. here, and I don't want to misspeak, because I understand that if you don't want to split focus on this either. So I will return to this when I have my data in front of me. As lame as that sounds. All right, sound good.
That is a great question though, because Sarah and I are both very into astrology.
We're both Capricorns and have bonded over that very deeply.
We have, yes.
And can you both tell us your favorite one-liners from the Unsinkable 8?
My head is full of season 2 right now. Tonya, do you have a zinger or a
oh gosh.
I mean, this is a Tonya line from 3, which is the Fadin's Fatin's sex advice.
Oh, God.
Fatin's sex advice from episode 3, which was, what was it? Something, and always carry Eucora.
Yes, I don't know how I became the go-to for the straight sex advice, but somehow a lot of that came out.
Well, you advocate for health is what you do, and that's
yes.
And then let's see who's had some good ones. I'm in episode 5 when we had this sort of Rachel Leah feud where Rachel was quite like angry over Leah about being psycho about Jeff's book. There was something, and maybe it's just like Rain's performance of that when she was like leveling her sort of frustration with Leah, just like she's just bugging. She seriously bugs. Like she's a bit extra. There was something very rewarding and satisfying to me about like these two women who are very driven about two totally different things. You know, Rachel is driven about getting off the island at this point, and Leah is driven about, you know, Jeff and this intensity, and how Leah kind of couldn't see that Rachel couldn't see that their intensities were matching. It's not a one-liner per se, but it was really lovely. And Rain performed.
So many great lines in every episode. I'm always drawn to the reaction line after the zinger, because to me, I love just watching what the actress or the actor's reaction to the line. And so, you know, something that always makes me laugh, actually, Sarah, in episode 4 is Leah's reaction to the whole Takis thing about, can't we just eat them? I mean, she just, that line is just so funny. And I don't know. It's not really about the zingers. It's always, I love the reactions, what the actors do with it after.
Oh, one day that like even the crew was dying. It was the episode 8 with the masturbation conversation. And the where are the pleasure nests when who was I think it was Dot was asking about where people go, or Fatin was asking about where people go. Where are the pleasure nests? And like these like male camera operators are like looking at me and they're like, I can't hold the camera. Like it's very exciting.
But Rachel had that one great line too, where she was like, okay, put it back in your pants. I just thought the delivery of that was like just unreal.
Rain is very funny. It's like we gave her all of these intense storylines at the beginning, but then her innate ability to like land humor is really lovely.
That was really interesting. And now we thought that since we have Tonya here, especially, we want to take a deeper dive into episode 4. So something that we love and appreciate about this episode is that we see moments between characters that don't interact very often, like Shelby, Fatin, and Nora hanging out by the water, and Leah and Martha discussing falling in love. Can you talk about what the challenges are to having to write for so many characters, and how do you choose which relationships to explore?
Tonya, do you want to dive into that, or do you want me to kind of kick it off?
You can kick it off. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. I mean, for each episode, we sort of start by deciding, you know, who's dealing with what on an emotional level. You know, before we even talk about what environmental conflicts they're going to come up against, you know, we always start with where are the characters emotionally in their relationships, what do they need, what are they sort of saddled with, and you know, and that will, it's weird. There's an alchemical thing that just happens and people end up feeling really beautifully paired, you know. Leah at the top of 4 was, sort of tormented by the Jeff thing, because in episode 3, Fadin had kind of triggered her by saying that Jeff is really creepy, rightly so. It's like the voice of wisdom, but you're not ready to always hear the wisdom. So Leah is sort of trying to figure out, like, oh my God, was I just a fetish object? Did he really love me? What's happening? And she is just in this cloud of not understanding love and kind of hating love, and also not being able to escape it. And Martha is this, is a little bit naive and has a more innocent view of love and thinks it's something really aspirational and something she wants in her life and dreams of. And so you have one character who's like kind of jaded and not sure, and then collides with a character who's has a sweeter and more innocent outlook, and they become an interesting, pair for each other to share. And they're both right, like love is horrible. And it's also really beautiful and sweet. And you want to have people who are both right, but have conflicting opinions, which is often leads to like very interesting arguments.
That scene was really, I thought, teed up well from episode 3 also, Sarah, because the scene you were just talking about, Martha really hadn't gotten the advice that she was hoping for from Fadin. But she did get a little information about the book, and so that sort of naturally led her to talk to Leah. So hopefully those character scenes started coming organically from what, like Sarah said, where each character was emotionally and who they would be talking to at that point in time.
Yeah, it really felt right, and of course the actors elevated it. And in terms of a trio like Fadin, Nora, and Shelby in the water, we had always wanted to we wanted to reflect on being away from your phone, being away from social media, not too heavily handed, because I think it easily could have become like a whole show about that. That's such a big, we were on set yesterday and there was no service, and I almost lost my mind. I didn't know what to do. Like, talk to somebody. But it could have taken up so much more real estate in the shows. But anyway, we had this, Fadin, who was really kind of struggling with it. And then Shelby, interestingly, had this appreciation for the remove. And I think that sort of signals the fact that this island is really something that she deeply, deeply needed in a way. Like, she needed to not be as performative. She needed to go inward rather than outward. And that's almost a harbinger, I think, of things to come for her.
Wow. I'm sorry, I'm not too sure what to say. Like,
oh, me neither.
Just remember go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no.
I just remember in the writer's room, Amy was, she just loved the idea of like Fadin scrolling through her phone, and she would just act it out every time, like it was
the blank phone.
Yeah, the blank phone.
Love it. Yeah, Amy was very fond of that idea too.
So in episode 4, another thing one of the favorite scenes is the shelter building contest. How did you decide which girls would go on which team and why? And also, why talkies?
I can take the why talkies question, but Tonya, because that was like a mathematical thing. So, being in LA, like, Takis is sort of a fascinating like snack to me. It's like a little bit repulsive, but also very I sort of associate, like, for better or worse, like hot chips and that variety, hot Cheeto, etc., with sort of like a younger generation who's like doesn't give a shit and is ready to like really like go in. It's just so fun. Like, I liked that the snack that they would like vie for actually like doesn't have any I don't want to get in trouble with Takis, but like Takis corporate. But it has like not the most nutritional value, I would argue. So I didn't want the shelter building to be about getting something they needed. Like, I wanted it to be about a little bit of a lark that would because the fun and the energy would be from the conflicts and the emotions rather than, if it was like a real genuine prize, like I don't know, like a protein bar with actual vitamins. I think it would be less, it would be just less energetic and less fun and idiosyncratic.
I feel like very protective of you, Sarah, also that I think I'd seen a lot of things that people thought it was originally a product placement, and it was not. It was born out of your research and like just the amount of research that Sarah does, and following teen accounts and really diving into that generation. That was something that you found, and then we started watching all the YouTube videos of hot Cheetos versus Takis, and then we tried them, and yeah, it was born out of your research, not just something handed and forced into the show. So that was again, kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. That one shot of the Takis hanging from that stick, it's sort of like a beauty shot. The camera operators, I keep talking about the crew, and maybe not the fandom doesn't necessarily care, but I'm like, they had a contest to see who could like get the hottest, most beautiful shot. It was so lovely. It was like, they were vying for like, it was a competition sort of meta thing that was happening. But it was lovely. But the teams.
Oh gosh, that was mathematical. I remember just like having the names up on two sides of a board and going through the order and what would really trigger Tony the most. The lineup with Martha and Shelby, and then kind of switching it up midstream and having I guess Martha get to pick Shelby, right? So that was just super fun. Having her and Dot by for those and getting to figure out exactly, like you said, the math of what would be the most triggering for her.
Yeah, the picking was all about triggering Tony and also triggering the Rachel Nora of it all, like playing that out. And then also kind of alluding to Fadin's absolute ID GAF attitude. So.
In episode 4, another fandom's favorite is the bond between Fadin and Leah. So like whether you ship them as Leah or you just love the friendship, it is undeniable that episode 4 was a turning point in their relationship. Can you talk about the tension during this episode and how their relationship evolved throughout the season?
Yeah. I remember in high school having people that I like, women that I kind of just saw nothing of myself in, didn't have any animosity toward, but they were just like running in a different circle. They were just like a few notches cooler, and also like had a different. And so Leah in the pilot, she's Fadin is a passerby who, she thinks is a little bit like not of the art school community. And, but it's not, it's like a neutral attitude really. But also a little bit of skepticism. Like, I don't really get like why she wears like stupid shirts and is on the phone all the time. So to have them together, they in the pilot find this moment at the end of the episode where they, really kind of clock each other finally as people that are sharing this horrible experience with. And it's that scene came together so beautifully at the end of the pilot. And, as we were working forward in the writer's room for the full season, I think it was just like clear that this friendship was something that if we did not fully mine and explore, we would be leaving something really beautiful on the table. But they are like so different. Leah is very cerebral and Fadin is like more corporal. She's like of the body. She's like body versus mind. I'm not saying mutually exclusive. Like Fadin is also very smart and like clever and witty. But this like, how can they not be drawn to each other? And also being from the same place, and like they just have their experiences precede each other. But yeah, I mean, it had to come to a head before they could really find each other. It had to come to this friction point in 4, which was, just really the actors. I felt like Leah that anger was so visceral. Like, how dare you tell me something true that I don't want to hear? That just, led to all the fireworks.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Another question that we have about episode 4 was that Tony seemed to have had a traumatic past between her and her mom and being in the foster system. However, in the episode 4, like, her backstory focused on her relationship with Regan. All the other characters' backstories seem to automatically explain their traumatic events and like their roots and like their connection with their parents. Can either of you or both discuss the thought behind the process of developing her childhood trauma later in the series and focusing on her relationship?
Tonya, do you want to take the baton here?
I mean, I think we did talk about her traumatic relationship with her mother, and there was a version of that. And if I'm getting this wrong, Sarah, please tell me. But I think just the lineup of the stories with Leah and then Rachel and then Dot, they were all very, very, fraught and traumatic. And then I think we knew we had a little bit of comedic relief coming up with Fadin in episode 5. But I think there was maybe a little bit of a feeling that it would be nice to have a little bit of a breath of fresh air for Tony in the middle of her story. I mean, it's still pretty traumatic at the end. She blew that relationship, that's for sure. And, she has really things coming to a head with Martha in the present at the end of that episode. So I thought that was a really great sort of little sidestep that sort of Sarah instigated to tell just a little bit more of a romantic story and to see a different side of Tony than we were seeing with Shelby and the rest of the girls. I mean, it was a great juxtaposition, I think, to really get into the interior life of her character more.
Yeah, the dimensionality of Tony was something that we fully needed to explore by that point. And we could have gotten it through a story about her mother, I imagine. But I think it came out better. It came out better through this love story that went left. That wanting and needing an ability to soften and to show vulnerability because of you have been falling in love with someone, because you have a spark, that through that story, through that love story, relationship story, that we were really able to explore that through the top of 4. Tony had been her dimensions were limited to very good friend of Martha, but also had this animus toward Shelby and a hot temper, and so it was time to unveil, and that's not to say that we won't explore Tony's relationship with her mother further, and we have a lot of some moments of reflection on that in season 2. So more to come.
Excited for that. So we'd love to take a moment to delve into each of the Unsinkable 8 a little bit more so we can learn more about them. So let's start with the first girl we meet. A lot of the time, the other characters don't really know what to make of Leah, and neither does the audience. We're impressed by her smarts, charmed by her humor, but also concerned by her paranoia. Can either of you talk about the process of developing her complex point of view and why it was important to have 2 episodes focused on her character?
Yeah. So with Leah, first of all of the characters have very complicated brains. And we want this show, if nothing else, to be both a endorsement and cheerleading for the complicated brain, never feel problematized or bad about your mind that's tricky and strange and takes you in weird places. So I think Leah is the kind of the forerunner of that agenda on our part, which is an immensely double-edged sword of a mind. And we really, we really dive into this in season 2, which is so imaginative and lyrical, and can, have these theses about, feeling boring, and like imagining losing your virginity in a basement. And oh my God, isn't it crazy to end up in a hotel? Like that's not necessarily an aspirational way to lose one's virginity. I'm not saying that, but she has these profound feelings, these profound reflections, and is able to just express herself so in such interesting fashions. But there's a toxicity to it as well, which is the paranoia. Like my brain is so imaginative that I can also imagine that my very nice, sweet blonde friend Shelby is going into the forest to, spy on us. So it's really showing the dual sides. And, in season 2, we're sort of exploring which side will come out on top. Is it the paranoid, uncontrolled part of her mind that can really run loose? Or is it sort of the beautiful, tender, imaginative, side that can love in a big way? So yeah, I mean, she's tricky, which makes her, for me, so relatable and magnetic.
Wow. Another fan favorite is Dot. And like, honestly, I never met someone that doesn't like Dot. So like, why do you think she resonates so much with the audience? What makes Dot so special to people?
Well, I mean, Tonya, do you have a sense of, why you liked writing for her? Or
gosh, I have to say, I just love. I loved in a lot of it is the actress Sarah. Your writing is beautiful, but she just stood out in the pilot. They all did, but she just really popped in the. I don't know. Again, it's always the reaction stuff. Is her looking at the shirt like this is my. This is my bottom. I mean, she's just so authentic, and I think we all wish we had a friend like Dot that could build us a shelter and take care of us a little bit. She's wonderful. She's just a wonderful character.
It's the authenticity and frankness. I personally am always sort of cloaking my words and my thoughts and everything I share in a lot of careful, will this make me likable? Will this, all of those kind of shameful patterns that we get into. But Dot doesn't, she's very frank, this is me. And I am practical and I'm, ready to be a rock here. But again, dimensionality. So we'll kind of explore some of the ways in which that becomes shaky in season 2.
Now to Fadin. It's hard to pick what we love most about Fadin. We know she had big plans for her life after the retreat, but how do you think her expectations for herself are changing after her experience on the island?
One thing we talk about a lot is, again, a very frank character, which is people can always be situated. Characters, I tend to situate them on a continuum of how much am I hiding and how much am I just speaking my mind. And she's a speaking her mind character. But we talk a lot about her she was a boyfriend guy or a guy's girl. She was a boyfriend girl that said, I don't really hang out with women. And I don't know. I imagine that would have continued to a certain degree. It's has women friends now, and has realized the value of that as opposed to this weird kind of phobia toward that, or just sort of was the pattern that she had fallen into. And it was how she kind of got her strength, but now that's changed. And these women have really become, and Leah in particular, have given her a lot of strength and identity. So I think that will inform her journey going forward.
Now for Rachel. It's very impactful to watch a young girl experiencing an eating disorder, but especially powerful to see a young Black woman who is very rarely shown facing this struggle on TV. Can you walk us through the decision of giving her that storyline?
As an athlete, she had always been an athlete to me, and diving is a very white privileged sport in general. I'm not entirely sure if it's changing or how it's evolving. Hopefully it's evolving very well. So, putting characters in situations and circumstances that allow for kind of emotional turmoil, Rachel as a diver is already, as a Black diver, is already up against, so she's up against these challenges that even I would not know how to speak to. But to add the fact that her body is evolving in ways that are not stereotypically aesthetically perfect for the sport. It generated all of this really these anguish inducing situations and problems for her. And she dealt with it in a way that, she could, or struggling, grasping for power back. And that led to this bulimia. And I think, as someone who personally has gone down that path before, and it's a bit of a lifelong issue. But I couldn't not shine a light on that, which was so present, certainly in my teen years, among not just myself, but people I knew. And it was very, very called to explore that. And through the lens of this Black diver who was trying to conform to some unfortunate set of standards, felt really rich.
Thank you for sharing all of that. So Nora's a very unique character who manages to keep surprising us up until the very end. How did you decide to make her the Confederate? And could you shed some light on the internal struggles that she faced during her time on the island?
I mean, I think there's a whole spin-off show about Nora as the operative on the island while everybody else was, building shelters. And we did a bit of that spin-off in the teaser for 10, obviously, but I'm sure there was so much more. We definitely, as mysterious and kind of, genre as this show can kind of weave toward, we never wanted the operative or the Confederate to be anybody who was doing it for, I don't know, diabolical reasons. It had to be a humanist story, and Rachel wanted to help her sister. We needed a Confederate to have done it for very personal and emotionally rich motivations. And this was a girl who had seen her sister struggle and was so desperate for it to stop. And this very extreme measure she took, ill-advised, and so it was very clear from the beginning.
Sorry. Yeah, that's so interesting, honestly. Personally, I was really shocked. I know that some people had seen it, had realized before we actually knew that it was Nora, but personally, I was really shocked to learn that it was her. Next, we have Marta. She is a character that stands out because of her pure heart and unwavering optimism, like undying hopes and stuff. However, we learn that a lot of this is used to an armor to protect herself from her trauma. As the island forced Marta to toughen up, which new side of her character are you most excited to explore?
Yeah, that that it's a sort of a mask or a mode that she had retreated into. It was denial, really. So, every step you take toward every step you take toward accepting all that has happened to you in a real, forthright way, you just open up more, and you, again, a bit cliche, but journey toward that true self. And so I think for Martha, I think that harder, franker, journeying along that continuum, like closer to somebody who can speak her mind. We have a moment in season 2 where Dot asks Martha a very sort of forthright question, or Dot asks for an opinion about something, and Martha says something along the lines of like, yeah, that's fucked up. Like just a very like straight to the point, just a hardness and less of a shrinking self. Just excited to explore her owning what she thinks in a more confident way.
Oh, Martha.
Yeah. Excited.
Yes. For both of you, who was your favorite character to write for?
Tonya, did you have a?
Sarah, I don't think you can answer that, can you?
I can't really. No, I can't.
They're all amazing. I don't know if it's. I will say that I do have a really tremendous love for Gretchen. I know there was a lot of talk in the writers' room about whether she was evil or crazy, and I as a feminist, I guess I always. I really, she may not have the best methods, but I think she's doing it for the right reasons. This whole. So I have a great love for Gretchen, and so she was very fun to sort of unpack a little bit.
I'm so happy you said that. Yeah, especially to Gretchen herself. And by the way, Zoe, Rachel Griffith said she was just so enormously impressed by the work you've been doing. I'm not like outing you as that inappropriately.
Well, you are now.
No, I said at the beginning. This was my first time telling like face reveal with Gretchen, so this was exciting.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I didn't. Yeah. Okay.
No, I said the panel. So
yeah. Yesterday.
Right. Okay.
I said it yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she's. For me, it's always depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in a really great mood, I think the sort of the lighter tones are always a little bit more exciting to access. But no, what's great is you just get to sort of explore different modes of expressing yourself via these incredible vehicles.
So, for Tonya, what's it like knowing that you had a pivotal role in creating a character like Tony that is so important for many young queer girls, especially lesbian? It's a pretty good question, but it's a pretty big one.
Yeah, Tony is created by Sarah. She was as written in the pilot and was already so rich. And then the pilot was filmed, and I got to see Erna, in the role, and she was wonderful. And I must have read Sarah's pilot. Sarah and I knew each other before the show, and I got to read the pilot early and then see the pilot many times. And I think Shelby's storyline was a little more of a fixed star, coming from a conservative family. And, that was also impactful to me because I came from a conservative family. And I knew that that was going to be a little bit more of a, not so much a coming out story, but an awakening story, I think, in the first season for her. And so for Tony, I think it was really fun to talk in the writers' room, about what would be the best juxtaposition versus Shelby, someone that would trigger her and attract her and repel her all at the same time. And so I think that turned out to be someone who, was already sure about their sexuality and very confident in it. And so that they would be on the, the widest ends of the spectrum possible before they could come together. And that when they did, it would be very meaningful. So, I mean, it's really testament to Sarah and Amy and the actresses, and it just turned out so beautifully. And it was very moving to see the fan reaction to that relationship, and just such a great love story in the show. And so it really means a lot to me.
Well, Tonya was so beautifully unequivocal about, she's like, if you have a character who has a more fraught awakening story about their sexuality, you need someone who's confident. It's not a question, and to have that voice with us as we were guiding these characters forward was just so, it was invaluable. Tonya, I just, anyway,
Sarah.
To this day, yeah, we haven't seen each other in a while, so I'm gazing at you fondly.
Okay. I will say selfishly, as someone whose own background was a little more like Shelby's, not to the level that Shelby's was. In some ways, it was very fun to get to sort of relive maybe a teenage experience that I didn't get to have, and it was very empowering to see that character and to write for that character and to tell that story. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, we are too.
So keeping on Shoni, we have almost a big chunk of the questions were on Shoni. So we wanted to dedicate the next few questions to their relationship, and mostly, and the fans are very excited to hear both of your thoughts on this, and especially really excited to hear Tonya's insight on this. So it would mean a lot to the fans to hear it confirmed that both Tony and Shelby are lesbians. If that is canon, can that be confirmed?
Well, one second. My light is so weird. I'm just gonna close this. My light got weird as the sun rose.
Fix your light, Sarah.
What?
Fix your light.
I don't know if this will be any better. Look, for me, yeah, right now they're lesbians.
We're gonna love that. That's gonna go crazy on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
I mean, sexuality to my mind, as it's something that can evolve, or we're constantly kind of checking in with ourselves about it. But I think that's pretty. I don't know if anybody had a different understanding of it.
No, we're actually proving a point.
Yeah, people were really excited. It was never actually stated, the word lesbian being used, so people were getting the actual information is making a lot of people very happy right now.
Yeah, and going forward, again, just people can evolve or feel things change, as it's my understanding of it. But currently in the storyline, yeah.
Also, there have been a lot of conversation about how Shoni came about. You've said that Shelby was conceived as a lesbian from the start, but did you always know that you wanted a queer relationship, from the beginning of your writing?
In the Bible for the show, it was not explicitly stated. I think it was on my wish list, but it really evolved in the writer's room.
Were Tonya and Shelby the only two options, or did you consider pairing Shelby with someone else?
Those two were our ship from the beginning.
All right. And like, did the chemistry of Mia and Edna on the set like really influence this decision, or was this decided before?
I think during the pilot, we all I personally like watched them with a sort of a question mark hovering over, like, how is this? What kind of heat are we feeling or lack thereof? So it was, not with any incredibly intentional way, but just as an observer.
Yeah. I felt like just from watching the pilot, Sarah, just, the scene where Tony hit Shelby with the bush, like, there was already a lot of chemistry and intensity there. So that sort of popped right from the pilot, and gave a lot of ideas about where that potentially could go.
Yeah, we had to watch to make sure it would feel honest.
So before starting to film the first season, between the pilot and filming, was it decided that Shoni would be a couple at that point?
After the pilot?
Yeah. And when did the actresses find out?
So after the pilot, it was a gauzy sort of wish list thing. I just wrote, the pilot alone. And I was anxious and excited to get other voices, particularly who could speak to specific life experiences on board before locking anything in. So it was a gauzy wish list thing. And the actors did not know until we came back for, actually, I'm not sure they really knew until like we released that script for 7. I could be wrong. I'm actually not quite sure what we told them. I don't think it was till we released that script for 7. They can I'll ask them to clarify this for me, but it was pretty late in the game, although they might've seen it coming. I don't know.
Yeah. Similar, not on Shoni, but about when the actresses found things out during filming, were they all aware of their characters, like overarching, like trauma sort of? Like during the pilot was, oh my gosh, Jenna, aware of what Martha's backstory would actually be?
No, not in the pilot. We didn't really talk about it. As soon as we landed to shoot season 1, we did feel we have to tell them what's happened so that they will feel confident in executing their front stories, their island stories. Like, why am I doing this? So we met with everybody individually around, shooting 2, 3, and talked about what was to come. So it wasn't until the very, as we were shooting episodes 2, 3, that everybody really sort of learned where they were coming from emotionally from their past.
Thank you. And so another very, very popular question was, when did Tony start getting feelings for Shelby and vice versa?
Tonya, do you have a sense of, do you have a?
I mean, I guess I may be biased, but I think it has to be a little bit in 4, right? If you're that triggered by someone, I don't know. I think there's something there, and maybe that scene where Shelby gave her a little kick by the water, and they kind of, Tony told her what was up about that religion thing. I think that the seed was planted a little bit, but Sarah, you might, I think, you're the architect of everything, so you might have a different.
It's weird. I think of the characters as having a little bit of a life beyond my intention for them. 4 is a place where something happened that was beyond beyond what had been experienced before. But I don't know. I don't always know their hearts really, what happened on that plane when they were together, So first impressions are always so powerful and they last. So there had to have been something. When they sat back in their chairs after, their first confrontation, they had to be sitting with some kind of reflection about each other. So they certainly loomed large in each other's consciousness. So from the get-go.
Yeah, even more because like Shelby had met someone that genuinely didn't seem to like her at like first sight. So yeah, I understand.
Right. I mean, yeah, Tony came for her immediately. Like she said the word pop. Like it's how, that kind of extreme reaction means something.
Yeah. Another great question is about Tegan. Regan and Tony's love story it means a lot for the fandom. And it's not often that we see such a sweet high school lesbian relationship. Can you talk about the process of creating Tegan?
Tonya, do you want to explore that?
Well, it was certainly aspirational for me to have that sort of relationship in high school. I think, I think it was just to have something beautiful that Tony ruined, and to then have that be reflective of what was going on the island. I don't know. It just was like I thought like a breath of fresh air in the middle of the episode to see this different side of Tony and, those sort of very intense relationships that happened in high school really fast. And then, and to just watch sort of Martha step aside and help them get together and then be there for her when it didn't go well. I think it was just one of those hopefully authentic high school moments for people.
Yeah.
Another relationship that means a lot to the fan is Shelby and Becca's friendship. Was Becca Shelby's first crush? Like, when did Shelby realize that she liked girls, and how did that internal coming out process went for her?
So, it's strange. I have to guard and be careful about speaking about things that we might want to explore further in the future. And so I'm hesitant to lock anything in a real permanent way. I mean, if we were to do some like deep dive into the very early days and explore, that very nascent feeling, I don't, so I'm going to just say it was probably not the first crush, but certainly the most powerful one that she felt in that way. The first time she was sort of leveled by that feeling. So yeah. And yeah, certainly strong to lead to that kind of fallout.
All right.
I know if you can't answer this, it's fine, but I know a lot of fans are wondering if Becca she seemed, after the kiss in the bedroom, didn't seem angry. People are wondering if she actually had feelings back or if she was just being supportive.
She was, for us, she was just being, very, very supportive. She probably wanted to talk right then and there, and to really get into it and just be the best friend she could be. We wanted to make sure that Becca's, what happened to her had everything to do with her own instability. And so I wouldn't necessarily, I didn't project feelings back from Becca to Shelby. It's really that fucking Dave, like coming in, and they could have found stasis right there, or at least gotten closer to a sweeter and open moment, but that didn't happen.
Dave.
Man, that character. So we need to know, in episode 8, what did Shelby ask Fadin's paper oracle? Like, that's a big question in the fandom. Like, there's a lot of speculation about like, oh, that was what like was written, or like stuff like that. And like, when did Fadin sense this like sexual tension between the two characters, and did it have any like link to what was written in the oracle?
When did Fadin sense it? I mean, this is another, like, how intuitive, and she's very intuitive. Fadin is very intuitive. Definitely 8, like, no, in 8, she would have realized that something was definitely going on with Shelby, and as everybody did. I don't know. Again, that's a very...
Before they were.
What's that?
She was probably onto it before they were.
No kidding. No kidding.
Fadin knows.
A lot of people in the fandom like have theories about the fact that she would have sensed it since the pill scene in episode 6, because of the facial expression that Sophia did in that's especially like scene. A lot of people are like, oh, that's when she sensed it.
I don't doubt it. That's what I will say.
Lots of people who have this running joke online. Maybe it's not a joke, but that Fadin is a fortune teller in some ways, because she says like it's Shark Week, and then in like episode 7, when you go back to the plane and she says dive into the ocean, which was a very funny line for the irony, but there's a lot of people who say that, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, like she's foreshadowing things that are going to happen in the future of the series.
Yeah. Was it intentional to say that Shelby's crush was Tony Romo with the Tony name?
It was it wasn't purely intentional, but then it's like, oh shit, like this really works for us in what we're trying to say. Certain options become on the table, and it's like, oh, that one, because it gets us a couple of different meanings.
Thank God he was the quarterback of the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
I know. Thank you, Tony Romo. I don't know anything. I don't know much about him beyond a Google search.
Texas Cowboys.
Indeed.
Completely general question. Do you already have like the whole story, like the whole show written and planned before until the very end? Like, even if it's just big lines.
Until the end of the seasons, or like to the end of the actual show. Entire series?
Entire series.
I know. I mean, obviously, the ins and outs of what characters will go through is a big question mark. But some broad strokes, and then I have an end point for sure, like how this sort of the major tentpole moment and how this all ends. So I think it's important to have that to guide you through, to know sort of what you're driving toward. So yes and no.
So 2 of the big fan favorite scenes, again, which I guess they're all fan favorites, but the muscle scene and the post-edible games in the water. How much of these scenes are actually scripted and how much was improvised?
All of the muscle scene was scripted except for I think a couple of Nora lines that were shouted quite. Wait, no, that was scripted. I think it's just the delivery was so like a pussy was so it was. I didn't know that would be the performance that we would get for that line. But it was that was all scripted. But the water party in 8 was like definitely like the actions. That was all them and their characters exploring.
All right.
So, yeah, we have a few people who've been want us to ask this question. Was Jeanette's phone intentionally in the pilot? Okay, before I ask this, was it in the pilot, was it already planned that Jeanette would be Lynn later on?
That came from the writer's room. So we hadn't really nailed down Jeanette's backstory. And then pretty clearly in the writer's room, it became like, oh, wait a second. Like, you know, we always intended to explore how she ended up there in the way we did with Nora. But this sort of double agent was not necessarily from the outset plan that came from our beautiful writer's room. Such a wealth of information.
So was it intentional in her? So I guess maybe it wasn't in the pilot to have the phone in the suitcase to wake up Leah in the water. And then also in a similar thing, a lot of people keep messaging, wanting us to ask, in the pilot, she's seen on the plane using her phone, and then in the water, it's somehow in her suitcase. Was that something that like went back later on to do that?
I think this was a 2-phone situation for her. She sort of had multiples, and we're trying to just telegraph that she's sort of the most connected and has, ways of communicating that are more than these other castaways who are not the operatives. I can only take one more question. Sorry, I have rehearsals.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay, so I think one more question we have is did having to change to film in Australia instead of New Zealand end up changing any of the plot for season 2?
No. There's some production changes in terms of setting and where we put scenes, but not in terms of the storyline. It's been a both, and we had a lot of people come over from New Zealand, so it was very a lot of continuity in a lot of the departments. So it's great.
Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh my God. It's, it's everything and I love this event, and I'm just really, really grateful.
Well, not gonna lie, for us, it's really surreal. Like, we're really proud of ourselves to have been able to put this event together. And thank you so much for making this possible.
Oh no. Oh my God. I'm touched. I'm moved. I'm just so grateful. Thank you to everyone. And to Tonya.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Gabby and Joe. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Stop. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was a lot of fun for all of us, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
Don't forget to use the hashtag to tell us how you what you thought of the 2 panels.